back, everybody, to another episode of Failing Forward. With me today is one of my very, very good friends, someone I'm very, very thankful that life allowed me to connect with and absorb her a little bit more over the last few years. Miss Sonia Dawson, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Excellent.
How are you? Thanks
I'm
for having
doing
me.
so good. Thank you. Of course,
Yeah.
of course. Super excited to have you here. As I mentioned a few moments ago, as we were just kind of chit chatting, you're someone I've wanted on for quite some time, for a couple of reasons, and I've shared this with you over some phone calls as well. I've always admired you as an entrepreneur, as a leader, as someone who is very confident in their voice. Um, but I also just genuinely respect your perspective in just about any aspect of life you could name.
Thanks.
Um,
I'm blushing.
good, good. I hope so. No, I really mean that though. Um, you're someone who is not scared to stand up for what you believe in or
Mhm,
what you think is right. You are someone who I think spends a lot of time really getting to know who you are.
mhm.
And through that process, it allows you to pursue the things that are important to you. And I say that because I think that's something we don't allow ourselves the opportunity to do a whole lot in today's environment or
Mhm,
society. I think we're very heavily um, focused on what others think. We're very heavily focused on what we, expect or what our parents maybe expect of us, what our
mhm.
family expects of us. Um, Not to mention we have things like social media shoving these metaphorical steps that we're
Yeah,
supposed to be taking down
yeah.
our throats. Um, and I've really admired ever since we've known each other that you tend to just be very, very inwardly thinking. And I mean that positively in terms of you tend to say things that are best for you. You're doing things that are best for you. Um, and I really admire that.
Thanks. I mean, obviously, it didn't, happen overnight,
Sure.
right? I think it takes a lot of work. It still takes a lot of work, but one of the things I think about all the time is I'm not here to be right, I'm here to do right. Right? So a lot of
Coming
things
out hot. My goodness.
so a lot of things I do is what is the right thing to do,
Yeah.
right? Not it, will this
What
make
is
me
right for
right?
Zanya?
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you do the right thing, it becomes the right thing for you as well,
Yeah.
right? Just kind of naturally, that's how it works. But it's taken a lot of work, and I'd be lying if I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I have it all figured out,"
Mhm.
right? Pressures from my family, oh, that doesn't mean anything. Like, obviously it
Mhm.
does, but, I'm definitely taking steps to work on some of those things,
I think
right?
acknowledging that you don't have it all figured out is
Right.
a very impactful step to take
Mhm,
as an individual.
mhm,
Um, I think again going back to kind of what we are exposed to via social media or just friendships or family, we we kind of have this interpretation that we're supposed to have things figured out. I
yeah,
remember literally as a young adult, I would tell myself like, "Dude, as long as you have things figured out by 25,
right.
you're great." And
Yeah,
then guess what? 25 came. I still had no idea what the
yeah,
hell I was doing.
yeah,
Um, but I think that's an important step, and it's very powerful almost to be able to tell yourself, "I don't know everything. I probably never will, in
mhm,
fact, but I'm here to continue learning.
yep,
I'm gonna keep an open mind.
mhm,
I'm gonna keep an open mind towards opportunities, towards ideas, beliefs, opinions, because that's what allows you to have those internal conversations later. If
mhm,
you're shutting yourself off to all these things outside of yourself, there's not a whole lot of development and constructive criticism going on in here.
yep,
You have to experience something new for the conversation to begin.
yeah,
Otherwise, you're just repeating everything you already know, right?
right,
I love the phrase of when you speak, you're repeating what you already know.
mhm,
But if you shut up, you have the opportunity to listen.
yep,
And I'm paraphrasing. I don't think it was that forward,
right.
but I love that phrase because
Yeah,
it's 100% true.
yep,
Like when was the last time you said something and went, "Oh wow." Like, did you guys hear that? Like
right.
like you never do that. But when you talk and you listen and someone else says something, you have opportunities to hear something new,
Mhm,
hear a new perspective. Um so I want to we're gonna jump around a little bit
Yeah,
today.
let's do it.
When we kind of decided we were gonna get together, I was like, man, there's so many different directions this conversation can potentially go.
Mhm.
I kind of want to start with though where we were just talking a moment ago before we started. Um, it was such a good conversation that our producer Alex literally had to tell us to shut up and let him hit record
Right.
first. Do you remember kind of the space you were in a moment ago in terms of self care and fulfillment? Do you remember kind
Yeah,
of where
yeah,
you
I
were?
mean, I think, right, like, you were sharing that this process brings you a certain feeling, a certain
Yeah.
sense of something,
Hmm.
right? And it's the whole process. It's from the writing, the planning, the shooting, editing, the whole thing,
Correct.
right? And that's where, I was like, well, then you're doing the right thing,
Hmm.
right? Things so much of what I try to do is how am I feeding my soul, right? And I think we brought up like self care is like the buzzword right now. Or
Hmm.
like, what are you doing for self care? What are you doing for self care? When I think the initial intention of self-care and the development of self-care was great, it has now been how to sell lotions and bath bombs and massage, blah, blah, blah. Even though those things can be self-care
Sure.
for
It's great
somebody,
to take a break at
yeah,
times.
but also acknowledging that that's not self-care for everyone,
Not only
right?
that, I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
100% agree with you. But we are a species that is fundamentally designed to feel satisfied in work,
Mhm.
in stress,
Yes.
in working towards a accomplishment and achievement. Um,
In this country, in this culture, absolutely.
I think just from a biological standpoint too. I mean, our brains produce more dopamine when we work than when we achieve something.
Mhm.
Like that tells me like that's our brains saying keep chasing this, not this kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um, but I bring that up because all of these things that we tend to think of now, thanks to social media, in
Mhm.
terms of self care,
Yep.
is it's the bath bomb, the bubble bath, the lotion, the face mask, the call in sick to work and stay at home watching Netflix. And I'm not talking down about any of those activities because I 100% understand that we need time in life to just sit and breathe and
Mhm.
time to reflect and time to take a break because work is not everything. Chasing success, whatever that version is for you, that's not everything. But I love what you said about self care not always being that sense of relaxation
Mhm.
because a very big piece of self care should be what fulfills you, what activities feed your soul,
Mhm.
what activities do you get really excited about to do,
Right.
what can't you like wait to wake up the next day and go
Right.
do. That's a really really amazing thing to say. And it's something I actually haven't thought of myself
Mhm.
before, but you're absolutely right because as I was saying to you earlier, I've fallen in love with this process. I've fallen in love with these conversations, with the preparation for it, the writing and note taking and thought process I get to have leading up to these moments. The mornings before we record, I love going on my walks that day and just preparing to be in that
Mhm.
critical thinking space. It's all work. It's all something that at times can be stressful. It's very far from relaxation, but I do feel fulfilled in it. I
Right.
feel like it has purpose. I feel like it has some tie to why I'm here.
Mhm.
And that's a question we all ask ourselves at some point, regardless of what beliefs we have. We'll all at some point in our lives, most likely dozens of or hundreds of times, in fact, we'll sit and kind of have that internal conversation with ourselves, or maybe with a spouse, or a parent, or a family member, or a friend, and really try to see if we can't have a firmer understanding of what brought us here, what's our purpose in being here,
Mhm.
what are we trying to achieve or accomplish in being here. And I think there's momentum or movement or progress in following the things that really, as you said, feed our soul.
Yeah.
Those actions or topics of conversation where you feel yourself physically change, where your voice rises,
Mhm.
where you stand up a little taller, you get goosebumps maybe. I think that's, and again, this is just my belief, but I think that any topic or action that causes those reactions are worth following. That's that's just me.
Yeah.
But I just love what you said there because it's a perspective on self care I haven't really thought of before.
Yeah, and I think so often people want to put onto other people, this is what self-care looks like. This is what feeding your soul looks like, right?
Mm-hmm.
When the reality is we should just be asking folks, well, what feeds your soul?
Yeah.
Right? And then there's a lot of shame that happens in that too of right of like, oh, working out doesn't feed your soul. Oh, well, shame on you. Well, we're all different,
Mm-hmm.
right? We should be encouraging one another to feed our souls, and then we all can come together and like find joy in that and share
Yeah.
that versus shaming each other because guess what? Advertising, social media, they already do the shaming for us.
Mm-hmm.
Us as human beings to one another shouldn't keep perpetuating, right, that shame. It should just be asking each other really questions of like, what feeds you?
Mm-hmm.
And how can I support you in feeding those things, right? Versus, oh, you should go at the end of the day, you should go and have a glass of wine and watch TV. Well, that ain't for me.
Mm-hmm.
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but I think, like, that gets pushed on us a lot of
It
what is
absolutely
the
does.
right thing to do? What's the right way to relax? What does success look like? And the million other things that get pushed on us. So I really try to push back and just ask people questions versus, oh, like, putting things on them, right? Of like, "Oh, you're having a rough day? Well, you'll have the glass of wine and you'll relax."
Mm-hmm.
No, it's, "You're having a rough day. What are you gonna do when you get home to care for yourself, to care
Right.
for your soul?"
I think we do very good at making recommendations for each other.
Mhm.
Like, hey, this worked for me. You should try it.
Yeah.
But that's from that point, if it doesn't land, if it's not what's meant for you in terms of relaxation or
Mhm.
whatever it is, I think that's when it's our opportunity as a friend or whatever the relationship is to say, hey, well, you tried it. Like, we can cross that off the list. Like,
Yeah.
let's move on to something else. It's not our job at that point to say, well, you're wrong. It works for me. It should work for you. Like,
Right.
well, we're all so unique in
Yeah.
every aspect of us. We don't look the same. We don't talk the same. We don't feel the same. We don't think the same.
Mhm.
We have different gifts, different abilities. Um, I mean, plus there's no fun in any of that. If that was true,
Right.
we would all just be doing the exact same thing, which ironically we kind of are, even
Right.
though we probably shouldn't be.
Right.
But no, you're absolutely right. I think it's absolutely valuable to maybe attempt to make a recommendation for someone, especially if they come to you
Yeah.
and say, "What do you think? What do you do for this? What do
Right.
you do when you're stressed?"
Right.
It's great to have those conversations, but it's also important to remember that, as you said, what works for me isn't going to be what always works
Mhm.
for you. I think it was Tony Polidoro in one of our earlier episodes. He said we were talking more about like self improvement practices,
Mhm.
things to improve discipline and focus and these things. He said, there's so many things out there that we can learn from, but from what we hear in podcasts, what we read in books, what we see on social media.
Mhm.
He said, if you try these things, and I absolutely encourage you to try these things,
Mhm.
don't feel like you have to make it. Don't feel like you have to do exactly what you read, saw, or heard.
Right.
Try it out. If something about it felt right, alter it. Keep
Yeah.
changing it. Like fit it to you.
Yeah.
Personalize it. Make it yours.
Yeah.
You don't have to have the same morning routine as Tony Robbins to be successful.
Right.
You can absolutely learn from his routine, try some of it on, see how it feels,
Mhm.
take the parts that feel good, throw out the parts that don't, and keep trying some other stuff.
Yep. Exactly.
And I think there's a lot of impact in that
Mhm.
because we do live in a world where we're constantly comparing ourselves to others. We're constantly trying to follow the same path of success,
Mhm.
go to college,
Yep.
get a job, buy a
Yep.
house, get married, have some kids,
Exactly.
buy the nice car,
Yep.
nicer than your neighbors, you
Well,
know?
I'm a big proponent of what does success look like for you,
Yeah.
right? It's gonna look different for everyone, and even in business,
Mhm.
right? Like, people like to think about, oh, success means, like, get an IPO, or you sell it, or you make X amount of dollars. Well, that's not gonna fly for me, like, that's not what success looks like for me,
Mhm.
and it's not, and I hope it's not gonna be what it looks like for other people, right? And 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 then we push onto others. What
We
does
do.
success look like, right? It's the kids, it's the white picket fence, it's the huge retirement fund. And if somebody doesn't have that, they're immediately unsuccessful.
Mhm.
I've met a lot of people who don't have a lot of money, but are the kindest, happiest people I've ever met. So the fact that we live in a society that success is measured by dollar or cars or looks is,
Arbitrary.
yeah, and a little ludicrous, honestly,
It is.
because we know people in our own lives that don't have those measure of success that we look up to,
Mhm.
right? That maybe don't look the way we think we're supposed to look, yet we still look up to them and go, "Wow, yeah, that's cool. That's what success looks like for
Right.
me." Right? So
And
it's pretty
I
interesting.
think it is relatively instinctual for us to do this. I
Mhm,
mean, everything in life is relative. Um, I mean, that's a fundamental principle of what we start to understand at a very, very young age.
mhm.
That person is taller than this person.
Yep,
That car goes faster than that car.
yep,
We create an understanding and an expectation of things based on how it compares to other
mhm.
things. So it's completely natural that in our older years we would compare the status of ourselves to the status of others in order
Absolutely.
to. The problem with it though is that we determine a worthiness to it.
Mhm,
We tie worthiness to
mhm.
that relativity, which that's where the biggest issue lies, because then we start having those conversations of self-doubt of, well, I'm not good enough, I'm not doing enough,
Yeah,
I'm not working enough, I'm not providing enough for my family, whatever the case may be. But more importantly, you said something in there that really, really landed with me, and it was that success in terms of business, especially in example of an entrepreneur like
mhm,
yourself, is not always going to be tied to how much money the business makes,
mhm.
how big it becomes, how many followers the Instagram page has.
Right.
You have a very unique story in terms of why you became a business owner.
Mhm.
Um, if you wouldn't mind, would you share with our listeners, one, a little bit about your business? Because I think it's brilliant and I've tried it and it's fantastic.
Thank you.
And I'm kind of in the mood for some right now. Um, and two, what caused you or inspired you to begin that journey in
Yeah.
terms of a business owner?
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I kinda have 2 answers to
Sure.
that, right? And I think we talked a little bit on the phone, just in preparation for this, and there's 2 questions here.
Mm-hmm.
What made me start my current business is absolutely different than how did I arrive at entrepreneurship,
Mm-hmm.
right? What made me start my current business is my passion to share my heritage and my culture with people. The innate belief that I have that food brings people together, it connects people,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's why I started my business. Why I became an entrepreneur is I want to meaningfully take care of my family. I want to meaningfully take care of my community and the people around me. I want to uplift voices that sometimes get silenced, right? We hear this term a lot of like, "Oh, give voices to the people with no voice." And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, everyone has a voice. I want to uplift those voices. That's how I arrived at entrepreneurship, right? There is that dollar aspect to it, right? How do I meaningfully take care of my family that lives overseas? Well, I got to make X amount of dollars, right? But there's so much more to that. Like I'm just not at the belief of like my success is my success. I don't have any success if I'm not sharing it with the people I love and with my community, right? And that's what entrepreneurship means to me. But my product for your listeners and
Yeah.
watchers, so what so when I first knew I wanted to start a business, I knew it had to revolve around food and I knew it had to revolve kind of around my culture and my heritage, which is Thai. My mom is Thai. Um, my father is American, but I was born and raised in Thailand, so I feel very connected to that part of me. And so I started with like catering because I'm like, well, I don't have enough money to start a restaurant, but that's what everyone else is doing is catering. And I was about a year into it and COVID hit, right? Which, everything in my calendar was canceled, right? That was just what happened. And I just felt, okay, there has to still be a way to share my food and to connect with people. So my business is a meal kit, right? It's with every ingredient you need to create Thai food in your own kitchen. And obviously, my hope in the future is to add more and more cuisines. that maybe are lesser known, right? Like maybe Burmese cuisine or Cambodian cuisine that are just less known here in the United States. Um, and that's my business. But with every kit I sell, I donate a culturally relevant food box to a family or an individual who's struggling with food insecurity, right? One of the things that's really important to me is like food, and especially food you want, maybe food of your culture, is shouldn't be a luxury.
Hmm.
Right? Like, wanting to eat the food that you want, regardless of if it's food of where you're from or just food that you want, shouldn't be a luxury. But we have put this blanket of like, well, beggars can't be choosers. What a terrible way to live. What a terrible way to see other people, to say beggars can't be choosers. Folks who need food help, they're not beggars. And we all absolutely can choose. It's not a luxury to want non-expired canned foods, right? It's not a luxury to want fresh vegetables. And I think I built that into my business, but it's also part of just who I am and why I wanted to own my own business is to combat a lot of what's out there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
I'm sorry, I feel like I went on a little bit of
that
a
was no, that
tangent
was
there, but
fantastic.
yeah.
What you do in terms of your business reflects who you are
Mhm.
so well. And in my experience, it's those people that do have the ability to go far with um, their entrepreneurship desires.
Mhm.
Being an entrepreneurship nowadays is almost kind of just as much as a catchphrase as self-care.
Totally.
Like that's most of
Everyone's
social
an
media.
entrepreneur,
It's
right?
hashtag self-care and hashtag entrepreneur.
Yep.
The reality is they're the same person. It's someone selling you soap.
Yeah.
But
Hey, no shade, no
no,
shade.
no,
You
not
you
at all.
sell your
If you sell
soap,
soap,
girl.
yeah, if
You
you
do
sell
you.
soap, you do it.
Mhm.
No shade at all. But it's a catchphrase. People
Yeah.
wanna identify as an entrepreneur. They want to identify as someone who's kind of going out on their own. And I really have nothing bad to say about that. I think it's phenomenal that we're doing that,
Yeah.
especially in a education system that doesn't teach you to be an entrepreneur. We're
Absolutely.
taught to be workers,
Yep.
which makes absolutely no sense because we
Yeah.
don't have the factories anymore that we had back in the 1900s.
Yeah.
But I still think it's phenomenal that people feel drawn to take more um, of just control into their own hands.
Mhm.
I really, really love that. What I love even more is what you said a few moments ago, and I'm glad you remembered it and said it again because we had this conversation a few weeks ago. And there's a difference in being asked, why are you an entrepreneur or what led you to being an entrepreneur
Mhm.
versus how you arrived at entrepreneurship.
Mhm.
Those are two very different questions because I can become an entrepreneur because I do want to take a greater control or raise the ceiling on my financial capabilities.
Absolutely.
But I can arrive at entrepreneurship for so many more reasons.
Yeah.
So many more reasons. And I've loved that you brought that to my attention on our phone call.
Mhm.
And I love that you reiterated it now because I myself, as an interviewer, I do fall into the trap of wording questions in one way. And the reality of it is, outside of even that example, there's deeper meaning to be understood in terms of getting to know someone based on how you ask a question.
Mhm.
It's not always, how did you start this? What made you do
Yeah.
this? And I just love that that's your perspective. And it shows me that you do take a probably rather significant amount of time looking inward, having those internal
Mhm.
conversations, and really getting to know yourself.
Mhm.
Um, because that, I would imagine, that's a question you asked yourself.
Yeah.
It was probably a conversation that probably went similarly of, repetitively saying, why am I an entrepreneur? Why do I want to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
And then one day that changed a little bit for you and that gave you a different answer as well. And, I love that that's your outlook on it. And I think it's important for future entrepreneurs to hear that because you can be very driven to go do something on your own,
Mhm.
but how you arrive at that desire is very different from
Right.
why you want to move forward with it.
And you hear a lot about like what's your why? And I feel
Hmm.
like it's similar, right? What's your why? And especially like if someone's listening or watching who's an entrepreneur want to start their own business or something, it's you got to find your why, because there's going to be days, and this just happened to me 2 weeks ago. You're doing dishes, you're crying, and you're like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, why? Like, why am I wasting my time, my money, my energy, my soul on this bullshit? Like, let me just go collect the paycheck, live on, my 401k, we're GTG, we're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
And my why and my like arrival keeps like knocking at me, right? Of like, because you want more than that. And like you said, like sometimes you have these like, why was I even put on this earth? Yeah, like not that I think I'm anything of anyone that's gonna make any, major change, but I believe I've been put here, maybe even if at the smallest thing, to help one family with some food, and then like that keeps me going,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or that I need to take care of my parents. I not only come from a culture that you take care of your parents, but I also have to. I have parents that do rely on me, right? So that why keeps like knocking at you, right? And it's gonna happen again where I'm doing something and I'm just like, fuck this.
Yeah.
Like, and I've talked to friends who are entrepreneurs, right? And I'm like, gosh, I wish, sometimes I dream that I could just be the person that like goes to work, is happy, comes home, plays on my phone and goes to bed. Like sometimes I wish I was that person, because it takes a lot to put your whole heart and soul into a business or a product, or just to put yourself out there like organically, authentically. It it takes a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'm like, why? What am I doing? But I can't stop. I
What's
can't stop.
what's funny about that is I think people may hear that first part of that last bit that you said
Mhm.
in terms of, that moment of uncontrollable crying and emotion,
Yeah.
that can come across as negative.
Mhm.
Like someone might hear that and say, "Well, you're obviously very emotional about this. Maybe you shouldn't be doing this. Why
Yeah.
is she still doing this?" I look at that in the exact opposite
Me
way.
too.
When we like our emotions are something that are pulling us in a direction.
Mhm.
It's our I don't know, soul, brain, heart, whatever. It's something instinctual inside of us saying that it's really happy with what we're doing and where we're at, or it's really not.
Mhm.
And those are two very different and recognizable emotions. They can be listed or categorized as so many things: joy, happiness, fulfillment, content,
Mhm.
depression, anxiety, stress, sadness. Like they're very separated.
Mhm.
And it's kind of, as I was talking about earlier, the preparation for a project like this. Love that feeling.
Mhm.
I'm going to keep chasing that feeling.
Yeah.
But it's also, you're thinking, why am I doing this? And then you cry. Is that maybe your soul saying, like, why you're doing this?
Yes.
Like, there's power in those
Yes.
emotions, is what I'm getting at, really.
Absolutely.
Um,
When you put your whole heart and soul into someone, and this doesn't have to be starting a business, right? Like I remember in like high school, right? Like I ran for like student body president,
mhm,
and I only got the secretary position, right? Like I didn't get enough votes to be
sure.
president. I was happy, but I still cried, because when you put your heart and soul into something, like you've given your all. Like
Mhm,
it's okay to, I mean, at the end of the day, it is okay to cry. I cry all the time. I
sure.
cry at commercials, at songs, at the fucking wind, So it's like we also connect that of like, oh, if you're crying, it's bad.
Yep.
No, I'm crying because this is my heart and soul, and I wanted to succeed. And I wanted to succeed for a million and one reasons,
Mhm,
but not, but I also, and we talked about this too, is I want to be candid and vulnerable of like, it's fucking hard.
yeah.
It's not easy to start your own business. It's just not. And
Mhm,
like, and I will sit here and be like, yeah, you're gonna have days where you just are like, fuck this, right? And that's okay.
mhm.
Sit with that feeling, invite it in, talk to it, right?
Yes.
Why am I like, what is making me upset? What's making me, and sometimes what's getting you to cry is I'm overwhelmed with orders.
That's a great problem to have.
Like, yes, but I'm still crying. I'm
Mhm.
like, "Fuck, I'm tired. It's 1 AM and I'm still putting my fucking boxes together." My husband's soundly asleep in the bed, cuddling with the dog. But it keeps me going though. Like, know that, like, it's okay to feel all of these emotions.
Mhm.
This is part of when you, especially when you start your own business, you put not just your own money and your own time, but like literal blood, sweat, and tears and your own soul. And you're giving that in your product to your customers.
Mhm.
Right. So of course you're gonna have feelings about it. Of course, it's not a bad thing. And yeah, and thanks for like bringing that up, right? Because I think so often people equate crying with bad
Mhm.
or this feeling of like, what the fuck am I doing with bad?
Right. I mean, it ties in so perfectly with some topics we've discussed before, but more importantly, it ties in with the purpose of the show, which is to
Mhm,
understand that there's benefits and opportunities to learn in darkness.
mhm,
Whether it's having those internal conversations when we're going through depression and really understanding depression ourselves, whether it's really revisiting a job or promotion we didn't get and actually having the uncomfortable conversation with ourselves saying, all right, why didn't I get it? Like, where did I fall short? Where can I improve?
mhm.
Instead of just saying, well, fuck them.
Yeah.
Like, it's their fault. They didn't want me.
Yes.
Like, they're this, they're that.
Yeah.
Like, no,
But
there's an
it's
opportunity
not
there.
but it's hard to not take it personally, right?
Oh,
Because you
100%.
are putting your heart and soul into it, and you're like,
100%.
"If they hate the product, they hate me."
Right.
It's like, "Well,
Yeah. And
no."
the point I'm getting to is we have a tendency to just avoid those feelings. We
Yes.
have a tendency, like, what do you do if you're crying in front of someone? You apologize, right?
Yeah.
It's, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry." Like, "What is
Yeah.
that?" It's like,
Right, right.
why are we apologizing? Like, and I understand it's maybe because we're, like, making people uncomfortable or whatever
Mhm,
the case may be, but it's like, you're having, like, such a powerful feeling of emotion that there is a physical reaction.
mhm,
That's I don't know if that lands with everyone, but to me, that's kinda mind-blowing. Like, you feel something internally so significantly that
mhm,
something physically happens,
mhm,
like, literally to the point where other people can now experience it. That's not really the case with any other emotions. Like, I
right,
can feel very happy, I can have anxiety, I can be sad, but I can sit across from you and you may not know I'm feeling those
right,
things. But if I'm crying, you feel my emotion.
right.
Like, there's something really powerful about that, and I'm kind of just realizing that myself here in
Mhm.
this moment, so I apologize if I'm too excited about crying. Um, but, like, that's very moving to me because emotions are a very internal thing. They're a very personal thing,
Mhm.
but the fact that there is one that we have the ability to share with the people around us, in terms of how them understanding where we are, emotionally, like, there just now I'm feeling like there just has to be a bigger benefit to it than even what we've discussed already.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think we spend enough time in those spaces
Mhm,
and getting to know those feelings and those
mhm.
thought processes.
Yes.
Man, I knew this was gonna be good. We're taking a short break from our episode to inform you that season 1 of the Failing Forward podcast is brought to you by Atlas Nutrition. Guys, Atlas Nutrition is a brand that I've known for really since they started. But more importantly, I've known the people that started this company since I was a little kid. These are people dedicated to helping you reach your overall health and fitness goals. They're a team of experts who have been committed to helping others for their entire life. Regardless of what you have in mind for your health and fitness, they absolutely have a coach and a program fit for you. They offer personalized plans offering everything from weight loss, body transformation, digestive health, corrective nutrition, performance nutrition, and even contest prep. And I myself am absolutely someone who would testify to what they're able to do. Just a little over a month ago, I contacted one of their senior coaches, Lauren, to tell her that I was actually experiencing some inflammation in my digestive system. Actually, to be quite honest, I didn't know that's what I was experiencing, but Lauren helped me identify that. Not only did she make changes to my meal plan to help bring in some foods that wouldn't upset my digestive system as much as things were, but she also wrote me a brand new nutrition protocol in terms of supplementation. And I kid you not, guys, I'm still on the recommendations she gave for me over a month ago, but I was feeling better in 24 hours. That is not an ad, guys. That is me telling you that I've had really excellent experiences with everyone I've come in contact with from this organization. Regardless of what you hope to achieve in terms of your health and fitness, they will have the right coach and the right program for you. And to be honest, I just couldn't be more excited and more pumped up to be a partner with Atlas Nutrition for the season sponsorship. And the reason is because they uphold the failing forward mentality. Whether it's to the coaches they employ or the clients they support, they prioritize the importance of properly feeding the mind, body, and soul. And we talk about that all the time on this program, guys. It's not just about what you're doing physically, the information you're reading, the podcast you're listening to. You have to really attack it from all sides. It's about everything you absorb. They understand that growth and development comes from more than just nutrition. It's what you're feeding your mind, your body, and your soul. If you're searching for accountability, education, and guidance in pursuit of improving your physical health, I would absolutely recommend contacting their team. You can reach them at atlasnutritionllc.com or visit them on Instagram at atlasnutritionofficial. Remember, tell them Jared from Failing Forward sent you. Guys, if you're ready to take your physical health and fitness and make it your number one priority, then they're ready to make you theirs. Reach Atlas Nutrition today, guys. I promise you won't regret it. So, the other thing I do want to talk about with you, because one, I love that you're open talking about it, because I'm open talking
Yeah.
about it. And I think it's important for more people to be. And I've said before, my goal with this show is not to inspire everyone to go out and shout their struggles from a rooftop. That
Right.
is not the case. If you're not the person whose personality doesn't align with doing what I do, don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
My point is, I understand that by me verbalizing my experiences and helping people see my perspectives, I'm giving them a new perspective. I'm letting them know they're not alone. I'm hopefully, at the very least, inspiring them to maybe talk to someone, therapist, a family member, a friend. Get us away from just pushing things
Yeah.
down deep inside of us,
Yep.
because there's damage to be done there.
Yep.
But I do want to talk a little bit about mental health,
Mhm.
because it is something I know you're a little more vocal about, like I am. Um, but one thing we talked about together previously was that mental health is not often visually identifiable.
Mhm.
We'll take depression, for example. In fact, it's usually the exact opposite. Like all these
Right.
big name people who have uh, passed away due to suicide, most of them displayed themselves as someone very happy, very carefree. They usually are smiling more, laughing more, making others laugh more,
Mhm.
helping others.
Mhm.
And there's, these phrases like, you know, the ones hurting the most look to help the others because they know what it feels like to be entirely alone, or something
Right.
to that effect. But the example that came up during our last conversation was pharmaceutical commercials for antidepressants.
Right.
Like, oh my god, I hate pharmaceutical commercials as a whole,
Totally.
and they're all over the place now. And like, it's at the point now where my wife and I, Annie, we sitting like, at the end of the night, like watching a show or something, and I literally will just laugh like out loud at these things because it's like, one, I don't have what you're advertising.
Right.
Two, I don't want any of the things that this thing might causes a
Right.
side effect. Like, anyway, that's a side topic. But in terms of antidepressant commercials, visually,
Mhm.
they're obnoxious
Yeah.
because it's always black and white.
It's raining.
It's raining.
Mhm.
Flowers are dying.
Right.
Like, it's horrible. Like the kid's beach ball's flat, like it's been
Right.
popped. Um, and they make it look like it's so easy to recognize when someone is battling depression,
Right.
anxiety, stress. And then guess what? They take the antidepressant. There's color. It's like Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
There's music, like forest animals are dancing, like it's
Right.
crazy. And I hate that that's how they paint the picture and market it, because one, they are marketing or conditioning us to believe that antidepressants are all you need to overcome
Right.
depression,
Which is
which are,
false.
yeah, unbelievably false. And two, it makes people who do not struggle with any form of mental health feel that identifying someone who is struggling is the easiest thing in the world.
Right.
Like they're going to be moping around. I can do that. And
Right.
then like when I see them, I can like reach out and help.
Right.
That's not the case.
Right.
People that struggle hide it really well,
Mhm.
really, really well.
Mhm.
For example, myself in freshman, sophomore year of college, I lived in the dorms. That was the age where my depression initiated and really settled in
Mhm.
hard. It was the easiest thing in the world for me to hide it from the 9 guys I lived with
Mhm.
in a very close quarters,
Mhm.
because I was implementing vices like drugs and alcohol
Right.
to distract myself from the inner voice that I was too scared to talk to.
Mhm.
And everyone I lived with, and even friends I didn't live with, on campus or other, within the university, they all just knew me as the guy who wanted to have a good time
Yep.
because that's how I could paint it.
Yep.
I was like, guys, it's Tuesday. Like, let's
Right.
turn up. But
Right.
internally, I'm like, I really need alcohol right now.
Yep.
But I could paint the picture of no, like, there's that one bar that's open. Let's go. Like,
Right.
and nobody understood that. And I bring up that specifically because people who need a vice, who need help, who need a distraction, who need what they think is going to help them, they'll find a way to do it in a way that will still protect themselves.
Mhm.
Always. Like you spend enough time in your head when you go through these things that you'll figure out a way. Um, and I don't even know like where I'm going in terms of what I want to ask you,
Mhm.
but you're the person I wanted to have this conversation with just because, um, again, you are a little bit more comfortable being in this area of vulnerability, which
Mhm.
is a uncomfortable one for
Yeah.
sure. But I also think it's so crucial for the conversation to happen because again, I know there are listeners who have had these days, these months, these weeks, these years. Um, it's important for them to know that they're not the only ones implementing these tactics, we'll call them.
Right.
Um, what's your perception on that?
Yeah. I mean, first thing that comes to mind is I was listening to your first episode that you shared with folks, right?
Hmm.
That you were at a point where you're like, I think my suicide will be good
Yeah. You,
for
sp-
others.
you spend enough time thinking
Yeah.
about something.
So when I heard that, so one of the phrases I share with my therapist is, I don't want to die, but I get it.
Hmm.
Like, I get it. I get why people want to commit suicide.
Hmm.
Like, like I personally have never like made the plan or anything, but almost every other day I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's cool if I die. It'll make so many people's lives better,
Hmm.
right? Like I'm just weighing them down. So like, yeah, I'll just go leave and then they can move on with their life without the burden of me around.
Hmm.
This like sad person, even though like that's not how people see me at all.
Right.
You know?
They're not perceiving you as that.
No. So I mean, I just wanted to like bring up that I heard what you said and I was like, yeah, yeah, my death would probably bring a lot of good to the world, right? But also what I wanted to like touch on too is this facade. I mean, I'll just speak for myself that I've put on for the world, right? Of people always tell me, "Oh, Zanya's like the happiest, most go lucky." I hear confident a lot of the way people describe me. And sometimes I feel guilty for I feel like I've lied to my friends
Huh. That's interesting.
of like, "Oh, wow, that's how you think of me, huh?" Because I don't see that when I look in the mirror, right? But then at other times too, I'm like, two things can be true at once. I can think I'm this piece of shit who just deserves to die and go away, but other people can love me and view me and still see me as this beautiful person.
More importantly, this can be true, but you can also love yourself as well. That
Absolutely.
that that reality exists.
Absolutely.
And I think people who don't um, face, battle, experience depression, mental health issues,
Mhm.
um, I don't think they grasp that.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of you're just this.
Yeah.
You're just depressed.
Right.
Um,
And I think it makes it harder for people to share because then that becomes their identity.
right.
Or you're my
Well,
depressed
yeah.
friend.
No one ever wants to. Yeah, yeah. No one
You
ever
know?
wants anyone who's ever had any struggles with mental health. You've never wanted to depression to be your identity.
Right.
And that was a big hurdle for me.
Mhm.
When I started attaching purpose to my depression and started
Mhm.
like changing my perspective of it and talking to myself a little bit
Mhm.
differently. Um, and I knew like, okay, the steps I need to take are I need to be more comfortable being vulnerable. I need to talk about this. I need to kind of start working towards removing the stigma. That was a fear of mine
Mhm.
of I don't want to be the guy that has depression.
Right.
But then I kind of, again, my perception I continue that conversation with myself and I'm like, well, what if I'm like the happiest guy with depression who helps people? Like that,
Right.
I could be that. Like that sounds
Totally.
okay. So it's like, all right, like I don't have to solidify this identity. Um, and more importantly, and now that I'm kind of talking myself through this, what people think of us is not what actually it kind of is. What people
Right.
think of us is kind of what we think of ourselves.
It
We attach meaning
it
there.
shouldn't be,
It
but it
shouldn't be,
is.
but it
But it's the
is.
absolute truth.
Right. We spend a lot of
Mhm.
time creating what we believe is the perception of others of
Yep.
ourselves.
Yep.
Um, yeah, like we spend a lot of time in
Mhm.
that space, which
Mhm.
is not great. But that being said, though, I also have spent time thinking about, all right, we all do naturally spend a lot of time in that space. We
Mhm.
spend a lot of time thinking about how will what I say act like, be perceived.
Right.
Is there purpose there? Like, why do we all naturally do this? Like, there's only really, like, in my mind, there's only a couple answers. Either we all do something we're not supposed to, or like we're all doing something for a reason we just don't know it yet. Like, and I know it's kind of a weird question to put
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
Um, like maybe who knows? Now I'm just throwing out suggestions, but maybe that's why a lot of our purposes have to do with helping others.
Mhm.
Like because we're thinking about how we're being perceived. Like I don't know. Like I'm just spitballing now, but
Yeah.
maybe there is purpose behind it. We just haven't spent enough time in it as a society,
Mhm.
as a race, to understand it fully. Um, because it just kind of is odd to me that everyone experiences that, and we experience it a lot
Yes.
to the point where we stress about it, we obsess about it,
Mhm.
we create our identities through it.
Mhm.
Hmm. Now I'm gonna have to go home and think
Yeah,
about that.
I mean, I think, like, the first thing that just comes to mind for me is, you hear this, like, word like, I'm a people pleaser, and I think some people truly are people
Yeah,
pleasers, but I do think just naturally we all wanna make other people feel comfortable around us, right? So, sometimes, like, innately, we're just like, "Okay, who do I need to be so that everyone around me is comfortable?" Right? And I
sure.
think that's why we apologize when we cry, because 'cause
Hmm.
we're like, "Oh, shit, I'm making you
I make you
uncomfortable,
uncomfortable, aren't
and
I?
I'm so sorry
Yeah.
about that." Right? So, I mean, like, I'm very big on, like, making spaces where people can be and, whatever they want. They can be sad, they can be happy, right? Like, that we're nourishing each other's, like, authenticity, right? Versus not.
Hmm.
I don't know, like, versus just how we're doing it right now ain't it. This isn't it.
Right.
The way
It's necessary though.
Because we've been told for so long this is the way we interact with one another.
I think I do agree with you. I think that's it. We're partly conditioned to. We're
Mhm,
told to. But I also believe you have to go through the difficulties in order to meet the end result.
of course,
You know,
absolutely,
like
absolutely.
look. Let's look at an example everyone knows. Let's look at the very first cars that were made by Henry
Mhm,
Ford. They worked. It was innovative. People loved them. They could travel faster than they ever had before.
mhm,
But in comparison to what we have now in terms of vehicles, it's useless. It doesn't have the towing power. It doesn't have enough seats for as many
mm,
people we have in our families now.
mhm,
It's not eco-friendly. Like it doesn't meet any of our current needs as a society.
mhm,
But we had to make that model, that concept before the other ones could
mhm,
follow. So is what we're experiencing now as a conditioned society in terms of the amount of time and energy and stress we
mhm,
put in the way people think of us,
mhm.
is that part of the process? Do we have to go through this in order to have these conversations and ask these questions in order to have that next step as a human race and
Possibly.
understand ourselves better?
Yeah.
Like maybe.
Yeah, well, like, that's the whole thought of, like, building a time machine, right? It's like, if
Do you like reading and like about stuff like
I
that?
do, and I love and I believe in,
Oh,
like, all the different dimensions and all of that
yes.
stuff, but, like, building a time machine, right? It's like, well, sometimes it's like, a lot of sitcoms or whatever will be
We're gonna have
like,
to hang out after this,
I
like
know,
outside of
right?
the recording.
A lot of sitcoms will talk about, like, "Oh, well, if I wasn't supposed to do blank, future me would have already come back and told me."
Right.
But it's like, yeah, but if present you didn't build the time machine for future you, it's like this, like,
Yeah, it's a paradox.
yes, exactly. That's the
Yeah.
word. English second language. I didn't
Hmm.
know that word. So,
I
or
don't even
thank
know
you,
that word. Is that
thank
the right
you.
one?
You know, so it's like one of those things like chicken or the egg, like what
Yep.
needs to come first,
Yep.
right? And I think, well, we're already here. So like my whole thought about doing anything is like, how do we make things better for like the human race,
Yep.
for the world we live in, for the planet, things like that, right? Not, oh, that's how we've always done it. So don't don't rile it up. Don't make the elders mad. Shit
Right.
like that. Like,
If we always stuck
oh,
to that, we would be living in caves right now.
yes,
Like that just doesn't make sense. I hate
exactly.
that. I hate
I
that. You know
cannot
where you
stand
hear that
that.
statement more than anywhere else is in the workplace.
Yes.
People are like, "Hey guys, we're experiencing a problem. Like
Yeah.
sales are down."
Yeah.
And there's always it's usually I'm not trying to be an ageist,
Mhm.
but like usually it's the person who's been in the company for like 30 years and
Mhm.
they're like, "Well guys, this isn't the way we've always done it." I'm
Yeah.
like, "Well, guess what, Brian? Like the way you've always done it isn't working right now. Like it's
Exactly.
time for new ideas. It's time for innovation."
Absolutely.
Um ah, so I have this like way out in left field theory.
Yeah.
Would you like to hear it?
I'd love to hear it.
So, I believe, I don't even know if I want to say believe. I just like to entertain myself with the thought, really.
Mhm.
That's what it is. Um, but I'll use the term I believe just for the sake of conversation. I believe that we experience, let me back up. Big believer that stress and anxiety are good things.
Mhm.
We actually require them as living organisms in order to move forward.
Mhm.
Without stress and anxiety, there's no progress.
Mhm.
We would just continue to be the same things we are. We'd be living in caves, like we just said. Um, but with that in mind, similarly to how I've attached purpose to my depression, I think maybe depression now exists more prominently than ever because we are being forced to adapt. I don't know what it is for. And again, I
Mhm.
don't even know if that's a real, I have no facts
Mhm.
to or analytical data to back this up. This is
Yeah.
just where my internal conversation has
Mhm.
taken me at one point or another. Um, but we've always had this question of, well, where does depression originate? And people will say, oh, well, it's because like this hard thing happened in life, or like I'm having trouble with this. I don't agree with that at all. I don't think depression comes from external circumstances. I
Mhm.
think you can have depressive episodes due to external
Mhm.
circumstances, but I think if you repetitively on a consistent basis are in this dark space, it's something drawing you to something else. It's something telling you you're not comfortable here.
Sure.
You need to change in order to be comfortable somewhere else, or to be comfortable as a new thing. This is where I kind of have
Mhm.
trouble
Mhm.
verbalizing this,
Mhm.
but we see this in nature throughout the history of the world. Throughout the history of the world, plants don't want to be eaten. So what do? They create chemicals within them that are actually harmful for us. That's why
Mhm.
there's poisonous plants. There's things we
Right.
literally cannot eat. Almonds actually are poisonous.
Mhm.
They're not great for us, but we eat them all the time, and they're delicious. Um, but literally, like over time, these things take new shape, I should say, in order to protect themselves, in order to continue living and thriving
Mhm.
as a living organism. And in order to do so, it has to experience stress first. The plant has to be eaten over and over and over again, whether it's by humans or animals.
Mhm.
And then eventually, these newer offspring of this same plant, let's go, okay, I need to change. Like, I'm not going to survive if I don't.
Mhm.
I would not be who I am without depression.
Mhm.
Like, I can't even paint even a little bit of a picture
Mhm.
of who Jared is without depression. But I'm also the most fulfilled
Mhm.
and most content with who I am now with depression than I ever was previously without it. I literally didn't know who I was
Mhm.
prior.
Because depression has forced you to have those conversations with yourself that you would have never, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it also opens doors to seeing things differently,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I was raised very much like no feelings. Pull yourself up by your
Me
bootstraps.
too.
Depression is for weak people. You're not weak. All of those things. And when I went through it, still going through it, it has opened me, it has forced me to have those conversations with
Exactly.
myself, right? So I think that's a good way to look at it and to speak with even like younger people about depression, right? Versus the just like, well, you're not alone. that doesn't fucking help. I don't
Right.
care.
That's a great opening statement.
Totally, absolutely, but
Where
then
are we
what?
going from there?
Right, right. I think it's really great, but I also, wanna just, like, pull out or, kinda, like, double tap on the fact that, like, you don't have to have depression to be
Oh,
successful,
100%.
right?
100%.
Right?
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
don't and you don't have to, like, go looking for trauma to be like, "Oh, I need a trauma or I need a
Right.
difficulty in my life to be great." You don't need that.
Mhm.
But if you are experiencing hardship, depression, trauma, it has, at least for you and I, right? Like, we can't speak for other people,
Mhm.
but it has made us better people. It's made us more critical thinkers. It's made us have conversations with ourselves in ways that we would have never had it because of our upbringing or our surrounding or whatever the case, right? So I agree in that sense for sure, of like, and I think I'm also somebody that's like everything happens kind of for a reason. That's just my like how I am
Mhm.
personally. So I'm always trying to find like, well, why is this happening? Let me
Yeah,
like,
I find myself in that space too. I'm not a fate person.
yeah,
Like, I do not believe that we were all put here with a predetermined and
mhm,
set path.
right.
I think we do have choice and we have the
Absolutely.
ability to change that path.
Mhm,
But I do, and again, and maybe they go hand in hand, maybe they don't, but I do believe events and people and conversations have purpose.
mhm.
So I agree with you. I find myself in that space as well. I personally, I just have a hard time uh, coping and existing without that, to be just brutally honest.
It
Like,
yeah, it's become a little part of your identity.
right,
I'm gonna go just one step deeper here
go,
if we can.
take me.
So this I'm being very vulnerable. I haven't
Okay.
shared this with anyone but my husband. So now I'm sharing it with the world.
Okay.
So good luck. Um, like I've always had a tough time with like weight
Okay.
and self-image and some of those things. Still do. And I had a therapist tell me, well, that's part of your identity. Like my nickname that my family calls me means chubby in Thai,
Hmm.
right? That's how they still call me. Like being quote unquote chubby is my identity. So what's sometimes stopping me from eating better, exercising,
Oh, wow.
is that I'm afraid to lose my identity,
Wow. You gave me goosebumps.
right?
Wow.
Like
That,
I'm afraid to lose that person.
wow.
So that really has helped me a little, but I still
How,
struggle with it, of
how long ago
course.
was the first time you like had that conversation with yourself? You said you've only talked about it with your husband before, but when was the first time you said it was with your therapist?
Yeah. Probably a couple years ago when I was really like, I would say probably 3 or 4 years ago when I was like working out, eating well, like
Yeah.
probably in the best shape of my life. And I was still like so sad and so unhappy and nothing worked. And then like I started, sharing that with my therapist and she was like, yeah, but that's your identity. Or you've made it your identity. You're whatever the powers that be has
Uh-huh.
made that your identity.
Wow.
So like it's the same thing with like depression, right? Just for somebody to be like, oh, suck it up, get over it,
Mhm.
right? Or to speak to somebody who might have trouble with eating or going to the gym or making some of those healthier decisions of like, well, get off your ass and go to the gym. Well, fuck you. It's not that easy. Sometimes for some folks it is, and for
Mhm.
others it's not. And I can't speak for others, but like that's been my truth
Yeah.
of it's been hard for me because I'm afraid of losing that identity. I'm afraid of losing whatever that means to my family,
Hmm.
you know?
You've got so many wheels in my head turning right now. That's a perception I have never heard before. And
Yeah.
not only like the specifics of your experience exactly, but more just on the identity basis in terms of anybody,
Mhm.
that we might actually hold ourselves back from implementing specific
Yeah.
change because we're scared to lose the identity we've created around who we were before.
Yeah.
Holy cow. That's monumental. You're blowing my mind right now, ZD. I call her ZD, by the way. Actually, my wife does, and now I do.
It's like everyone
So
calls you
she's
ZD,
ZD.
really, because
If
of
I
your
say
wife.
ZD, it's you. Everyone's like, "Who's ZD, guys? Is there a
Sonya
third
Dawson.
guest?"
Sonya Dawson.
Sonya Dawson. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. Because as you mentioned, that was not something you were probably planning on sharing,
Mhm.
nor was it something you've shared before outside of with your husband. I know how scary and possibly uncomfortable that was for you. So thank you very much. I know there is other people outside of this room that will land with, and they will thank you for it as well themselves. I know that. Uh wow, there's so much to unpack there. You're gonna
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack. I apologize for bringing it
No,
up with no
not
time
at
to
all.
unpack.
That's like crying. You don't apologize
Yes,
when you make me uncomfortable.
I
Just let me be
know. Be
uncomfortable.
uncomfortable. I'm not in charge of the way you
You're
feel.
not. You're
I'm only in
not at
charge of the
all.
way I feel.
100%. Oh man. So seeing you just you now you're opening up so many different questions in my own mind in terms of how closely tied depression is with identity.
Mhm.
Um, because it very much is. They go very hand in hand. And in my first initial years with it, I was someone who I believed had very high expectations from others.
Mhm.
So no one ever really verbally said, like, you need to be the one to go do all these things.
Yep.
I created the idea that everyone else thought I needed to go do
Yep.
those things. And when I didn't succeed at those things, my identity and my reality came crashing down.
Yeah.
Crashing down.
Yep.
I didn't know who I was. I didn't know how the world worked anymore. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't feel like me. Like I
Mhm.
genuinely I felt disassociated with the vessel that is Jared.
Right.
And that was scary. And like what you said actually makes like what I experienced in my early 20s feel um it allows me to make more sense of it, to be honest, because that's a area like, and this, I think the listeners probably knows at this point. I've created an identity around my depression, as I said earlier. I've created purpose around it,
Mhm.
but that part of my life in the beginning, where I was scared and lost and alone and didn't know, um, that's still a part I haven't fully analyzed as much as like the recent few
Right.
years. And it's because, like, I'll just be honest, it's because it's more uncomfortable.
Mhm.
It's easier to be comfortable with the part that I've attached purpose to, but that part is still a little scary. And I'll go there sometimes. I'll visit it. I don't like to stay that long.
Yeah.
It's like going home for Christmas. I'm like, this
Right.
is great, guys, but I gotta get going.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, wow. There, that was
Yeah.
so impactful of you to share. Thank you for
Thanks.
doing that. I
Thanks.
truly, truly appreciate that. Um, I'm literally at a loss of where to go from there, because I don't know. I don't think I can say anything else that will be as impactful as what you just
Mhm.
said. You're so amazing. I'm so
Thank
happy
you.
you are here today.
Thank you.
Um, and I'm so thankful for it. Now I'm just going off track, but I feel like it's necessary to say I'm so thankful for the relationship I have with my wife's friends.
Mhm.
And I've always been very thankful for that. And initially it was because I saw the importance they had to her, and I
Mhm.
saw like who she was around them. And I just fell in love with, her in that space.
Yeah.
Um, but so many of you have become such important people in my own life as well. And you don't have to spend countless hours with people
Mhm.
for you to hit that point with someone.
Right.
Um, you really just have to hit a point where you're comfortable enough to be a little uncomfortable.
Mhm.
There's a handful of you guys that have made that impact in my life, and I'm super, super grateful for that, because I know not everyone has the ability to mesh so cohesively with maybe their spouses or their partner's circle.
Mhm.
So I just feel like this is the right time to thank you all.
Yeah. Well,
And if they're
thank you,
not
Jared.
listening, then it's just for you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
um,
Yes. Quality over quantity any day.
100%, 100%. I think I want to leave it there.
Okay.
because I don't think there's anything more that can make this time to our time together any more significant, because that was fantastic. I'm still like recovering from it. Um, Thank you so much for being here today. I do want to make sure we take a moment to allow listeners to find you on social media. So either your personal or your business page, whichever one you're comfortable sharing. Would you
Yeah.
mind giving yourself a little shout out real
Yeah,
quick?
absolutely. Yeah, so for my business, Thai meal kits delivered to your door.
And I want to point out, I'm not a cook, a chef, or anything.
Yeah.
I was a bodybuilder for a long time. I
Mhm.
cooked unseasoned chicken and rice for years. You made me feel like I could cook. You provide everything the way it needs to be,
Mhm.
with step by step instructions. I did not feel lost doing it. I did not feel like it was above me. So, coming from someone who really is very, very uh,
Novice.
unskilled
Yeah,
novice in the kitchen,
nice.
you made me feel like I was doing something very exceptional, and I was able to provide a very exceptional meal. Um, that's something I can't do. So that alone, the food taste quality aside, I loved that about your service. So I just had to say that
Thank
real
you,
quick.
thank you. Well, it's all about that connection, right? Like, I want you to be in the kitchen with
Mhm,
your wife, both being novice cooks, having fun together. That's what
mhm.
food does, um, especially in the process of making it, but
Yeah.
also eating and sharing. Yeah, but my Instagram is at Saranya. That is yeah. That is Saranya Cooks Thai. So Thai, and that's
I'm gonna have that right
Facebook,
here.
Instagram, right here. I do have a personal page and I do keep it private. I do think there's some things that are meant to only be shared for people who have earned the right for me to share those things with them.
100% fair.
So
100% fair.
v-
Um,
visit my business. My face is all over it. It won't be
yeah.
short of this.
And if you live in Colorado, she does deliver the food to you,
Yep.
which is becoming a more common theme in the world we live in today.
Yep.
But I just wanted to make sure that was, you don't have to be in and around the Denver area specifically.
Yep. In Colorado, delivered straight to your front door. You can have authentic, traditional Thai
Especially
food.
with like holidays coming up too. If you guys are looking to do something a little bit out of the ordinary, get away from like the traditional ham turkey meals that we commonly do,
Totally.
want to do something different, I think that'd be awesome to do
Or
for holidays.
add,
Yeah.
like add to your traditional meals,
Mm-hmm.
right? Bring a little flair, a little flavor.
100%. Yeah.
Hmm.
I think that would be an awesome time to try something out like
Yeah.
that. ZD, thank you so much again. This was amazing. I don't want it to end. But thank you guys for tuning in again. This was a just amazing episode, and I just want to like sit in this space for more time. But thank you guys again. We'll be back next week. No matter how hard you fail, fail forward, guys. Thank you very much.